Rania, welcome.
Hello, Abby.
Nice to be back in the situation of interviewing you again.
I know, it's lovely. Thank you. I'm very glad that you were able to do this for us. Thank you.
Absolute pleasure. So we've just spoken with Trevor and he's just told us about the journey of the last 30 years and some key memorable moments that stand out. What point did you join in the 30-year journey?
So I came probably about halfway through. So we did say we'd never work together, but it just sort of made sense. I think I came in to help him on a pitch and sort of never left. My agency life background was I'd come from sort of below the line, so I'd done all the other stuff. And I always found it unbelievably frustrating that you'd sort of always be sort of brought in as a secondary to the TV, and you'd work with TV agencies and they'd give you a TV idea and you'd have to kind of do something with it. That was the background I'd come from, because when you're working in sort of more, I guess what was called below the line, but multi-channel backgrounds outside of TV, you need ideas that can work really hard. So I'd kind of really understood how you sort of get to a big idea, how you unpack a big idea, how it lives in different spaces. And that was just something that was just increasingly becoming important. So so that's sort of, and then that's the rest, as they say, is history.
And the rest, they say, is history. And let's talk about some of that history. What are those kind of key moments that stand out as milestones where things shifted?
Yeah, I mean, it took a bit of time to embed that kind of way of thinking into the business, which actually was an interesting process. And for me as well, learning TV, I'd never done TV, and it's kind of, it's a complete, in some ways a different, obviously it's a completely different medium in terms of storytelling, and so it took a bit of time to kind of get that sort of thinking as a sort of instinctive, natural behavior within the business. But what we were finding was as an agency, we were starting to move into some really interesting categories, starting to be able to win business in spaces that maybe we hadn't before, that have got a stronger through the line focus.
And as you said, that one of the reasons that you wanted to bring that is that's where clients were going, what they wanted. Tell us a little bit more about how that ignited within you and making sure that you were delivering work that was not only creatively brilliant and bold, but also effective.
Yeah, I think we talk a lot about compound creativity, and we know it's sort of quite a popular word at the moment, isn't it? And you can interpret it in lots of different ways. I think for a lot of people, compound creativity is just consistent visual assets. I think the way I've sort of grown up to understand it is that a brand behaves consistently. They have a kind of consistent North Star point of view. Call that, some people call it purpose, a role, however you want to define it. But what it does is it informs how they show up wherever they show up, and whether that's a beautiful piece of storytelling in AV, or whether it is what informs your internal culture, or what informs your kind of experiential behavior and outlook. Our ambition is to deliver kind of transformative business impact, and that is like unprecedented effectiveness. And I think we're really proud that that is something that we've delivered many times for our clients, helping a brand take over a key competitor for the first time ever, or deliver 3 quarters of consecutive growth that they've never achieved before. That's the kind of stuff we're looking for, and it's hard to do that without building on investment year on year and doing kind of really significant, consistent, strong kind of work. So that's kind of
and is that what you talk there about going deeper?
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit more about the deeper and the transformative process to having that long-term brand building success with your clients.
I think it's very tempting to do a TV ad and then sort of stick that everywhere, whether it's a still for the out of home, or whether it's kind of cut downs from the telly and things like that. What we try to do is deliver things that have the impact specifically within that channel, and will kind of live alongside and outside of any other kind of communication that you have. And yes, there'll be visual sort of threads and red threads throughout, so that that every single channel's working as hard as it can and is engaging with people in the way that they should be engaged within that channel. So it's things like that. It's also just having long-term platforms that just last.
So having that clarity on the brand and its role, being able to make sure that you are developing ideas that have the longevity so that they can compound the creativity. So, couldn't agree with you more. But I'm sure there's been many differences in thinking from the profession over the years. I'd love to hear about some of the marketing principles that may be the same today.
Yeah, I mean, I think less has changed than we realise. And I think that obviously the route to the customer consumer is changed. The level of data and insight that we have has changed. Obviously, there's huge amounts of talk around AI. So, how we produce output, how we work, all of that, how we can kind of shortcut information. All of these things are changing. But the things that stay consistent are, first of all, how you engage with human beings. We haven't changed as much, but nearly, if you're looking at sort of deep, our behaviour's changed. Those foundational principles of how to move people, how to make people feel, how to make them think differently, or how to embed kind of memory structures and all those sorts of things. None of that's really changed. Where you're kind of applying that and in what way is obviously what's different. But so, those kind of getting a really strong universal human insights, understanding that maybe at a more granular level in a way that we maybe haven't had to before, but still understanding kind of how to move people emotionally. Doing really distinctive work. I mean, even more so now than ever. We're now competing with cat videos and all sorts of content that's out there in an unbelievable amount of content. So standing out, vying for attention, being distinctive, that's still at the forefront of everything we do.
So those principles remain the same, but the landscape changes, right?
Yes.
And I'm sure there's many that are watching this thinking 30 years. Many agencies, independent agencies, don't get to 30 years. What do you think is the magic that's allowed you to get there, to last while maybe others haven't?
Well, I think we've stayed true to these really core principles that are still relevant. I think the hardest thing is staying relevant. I mean, don't get me wrong, it's challenging running an independent business. And quite honestly, there's been some brilliant agencies that haven't made it for various reasons that are not always,
Within their control.
within their control. We've been tackling a lot of challenging sort of environmental things. So I think, putting that sort of to one side, I think the fact that we have sort of stayed true to these principles, so we're still relevant now as much as we were all those years ago.
Yeah, that consistency of values and what you stand for, and particularly the leading of an agency, an independent agency. How would you describe yourself as a leader?
I would say what you see is what you get. I think it very sort of collaborative. I think inclusive, I guess. We've got very much, I mean, it's true to the kind of fundamentals of our ownership structure, being an employee-owned business. It was really just like quite an interesting kind of transition to make, because actually we were kind of doing that stuff anyway. So the employee ownership model is just more consultative, it's more transparent, it's about shared equity, shared rewards. And so it was sort of felt like a very obvious kind of way to go, because it's just held so true and not just me, to Trevor. I mean, I think that's something that we go about things very, very differently, but they're shared values that we have, and I think that's very much ingrained in my leadership style.
Yeah, the authenticity, and when you look at the components that make someone trust a leader, authenticity is one of those key pillars. You do so much to help the profession as well. Can you share a little bit more about what you've done to drive diversity and equality in the industry?
I think probably the consistent theme in all the things that I do, sort of, I think it's obviously part of our business model, but also that I've done outside of the kind of day job, is this sort of desire for a more equitable sort of society, if you like. And I think that comes very much from my childhood, from my feeling of not necessarily fitting in, belonging, my early experiences in my career, sort of being discriminated against, if you like, for not having a university degree, and people not necessarily recognising the value you bring outside of this very traditional sort of pathway in. And so I think it's just become very sort of natural to me to sort of create opportunities and create an equal sort of level playing field, if you like. And also being a woman, growing up at a time where there wasn't that same opportunity for women in the workplace, and so more at that end of it. So I think it's just wanting to make it easier for easier for people that have come behind us, I guess. So yeah, I think that's been a key motivator. So all the stuff I've done with WACL, which is obviously about helping drive equal opportunity and accelerate, female leadership in the industry, as well as the work that we've done together with Trevor at Create Not Hate, and like I said, the employee ownership model as well. It's got a kind of consistent theme there.
Equality is the theme through everything you've just described, and I always think that passions come from a place of lived experience. So for those that come behind us that want to also lead agencies as you do, what advice would you give them?
Honestly, it's don't give up, because it's so easy to, and just learning to enjoy that journey and learning to ride it out. The people that really do kind of get to the is persistence more than anything. It's persistence and so I think just hold firm and hold true, and things always come round no matter how tough it gets, because coming through those more challenging periods and coming back out is what makes it so rewarding.
Yeah, as I often say, our challenging yet rewarding profession.
Yes, exactly.